two-time national champion, published author, business owner, CEO, stars in multiple commercials, the one and only Molly Binetti. Molly, welcome.
I'm really excited to be here. Really excited that you asked me and to be the first guest. Obviously, you hear injuries plague so many teams, and
Right.
we've had 54 games missed total in 6 years out of 2,700
Wow.
opportunities, and your entire class stayed healthy. And those three, Zaya, Bree, Aaliyah,
Right.
started every single game. They didn't miss a game.
Right.
None of you guys missed a game
It's
in your
pretty
entire
incredible.
career.
It's honestly pretty
Your
unheard
entire
of.
class didn't miss a game in their entire career.
That's pretty unheard of.
It starts with coach, but every single person
Right.
doing their job at the highest level.
A month later, my mom gets a call from Dawn Staley offering a preferred walk-on spot to me. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Coop. I'm your host, Olivia Thompson. I am super excited to be starting this journey with you guys. Feels like a long time coming, and I'm super excited to see this vision come off the ground. The purpose of this podcast is to highlight the behind-the-scenes people at this university who you might not see a lot, but have huge, impactful roles, who I also have personal connections with, and I want to share it with you guys. Welcome. It's going to be a great time, and I'm very excited to get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Coop. I am your host, Olivia Thompson. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today and start this new journey. I've been waiting a long time to bring this vision to life. Today, we're being joined by my very good friend, a total bad two-time national champion, published author, business owner, CEO, stars in multiple commercials, the one and only Molly Binetti. Molly, welcome. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes.
Really excited that you asked me and to be the first guest. I'm honored and excited to talk with you.
Yes, this is gonna be a lot of fun. I wanted to kick off just by talking about how you got started in your career as a strength and conditioning coach. I've always been very eager to know what got you kickstarted in this direction.
It's kind of funny because I don't even remember ever even knowing strength and conditioning was a profession. And I always tell people that it sort of fell in my lap in the sense that I always played sports. I always grew up in that environment. I always loved it. I was that kid that grew up with all the boys in the neighborhood playing whatever sport it was. I got hurt a lot as a kid. I had multiple knee injuries and then spent a lot of time in physical therapy. And as I went throughout middle school, high school, and even getting into college, I thought maybe I wanted to do something along those lines of physical therapy and work in sports because I knew that environment. And then I was like, no, actually, you know what? I'm going to go business. I want to be a business major. I want to do finance or accounting. I was really good at math. I knew I could make good money doing that.
Right.
And then before I even got into college, I was like, wait a second, that's not what I'm excited about at all. I can make a good career, but I don't want to sit at a desk for my entire life.
Yeah.
So as I got into college, I was an exercise science major, and I had a class. I met once a week, and every week it was just somebody else from a different profession coming in and basically presenting to us what they do and what their career line was like. And I had no idea strength and conditioning ever existed. But the head strength coach at Marquette came in and gave this presentation, and I was just enamored by it and wanted to know more. And so we had to do this assignment where we interviewed somebody. And so I interviewed him for this project. I met him at the weight room and asked him all these questions, and he was gracious enough to be like, if you ever want to come volunteer or observe or whatever it is, you're more than welcome. He said, we've got workouts tomorrow. They start at 6:30, whatever it was. If you want to come, you can. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, why not? I had no idea. So I showed up the next morning at 6 in the morning, and then anytime I had free time, I just kept coming back. And was this shy, insecure person just stood there. I just remembered standing there. I probably didn't talk to anybody. And I just kept coming back, and something about it, as I learned more about the body and all of it, I just kind of took it and ran with it. And there's so many layers to it and so many experiences that I had, but I like made up my mind throughout the course of my undergrad. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to work in Division I college athletics. I want to be the best strength and conditioning coach there was. And at the time I was like, the end all be all was I want to be a Division I strength coach. And I had some really cool internship opportunities. I went to grad school and I met a lot of really, really cool people early on. And then before I know it, I'm 23 years old and I'm a full-time Division I strength coach at Purdue University. And I was like, oh, like shoot, like now what?
It's real,
like nobody taught me what a career in this profession looked like. I just knew that I worked in college sports and that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I feel like my whole career has just been like figuring it out, like either on my own or like seeking out the best people in the field to learn from, and then just continuing saying yes to so many opportunities, taking risks, moving my life across the country, and then like 12, 13 years later, here I am in South Carolina, which has been like the most dream job I could have ever experienced.
Absolutely. So. And you know you're truly aligned when you kind of get lost during the process. Like you said, you kind of like, you blink and you're a D1 coach at 23. Like you don't even know where the time went. You know, it's like that passion that just got you there. So when you started shadowing the coach at Marquette, this was for all the sports at the university. What sport stood out to you the most?
Yeah, so I would show up, and basically whenever I was there, it was whatever sports were training at that time. And it ended up being, I think Marquette had 11 or 12 varsity sports at the time. So I worked with a little bit of everything. I got to see both men's and women's basketball, soccer, lacrosse, track and field, really the whole thing. And I always loved basketball. That was my love. As an athlete, I played basketball, I played softball. I played soccer for a little bit, but something always drew me to basketball. And as really I went throughout my career, I worked with every sport in some capacity. And at Purdue, I worked with 7 or 8 different teams. And when I went to Louisville, I spent 4 years there, and I whittled those teams down. I worked with basketball, softball, volleyball, and tennis. And then I knew at some point, like in the collegiate setting, basketball, both men's and women's basketball have their own strength coach that just work with that sport. And then obviously football, and they're kind of their own thing. But I knew at some point I wanted to explore the basketball-only route, and got really lucky in that because I said yes to so many things and just sort of took risks and just tried to learn and do it all, I met some really, really cool people, and that's how I ended up getting connected with the strength coach that worked at South Carolina before me, that ended up helping me get a foot in the door for this job in the first place. Absolutely.
That's very serendipitous that happened. Yeah. So tell me some about your experiences at Purdue. How did you land that job? What are some of your entertaining or just funny anecdotes that kind of stick out to you throughout that time? Because I don't think I've even heard a lot about your time at Purdue.
Yeah, it was short. I was only there a year, but it's one of my favorite experiences. One, because I got there and like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. Like you learn how to write a program and you learn about all these things, but then you actually get to the job and you're like, nobody teaches you how to actually do this thing and work with coaches. But part of it was like I just kind of got to do it and figure it out. I got thrown into the fire. I didn't have a lot of direction from my boss at the time, which wasn't a bad thing because I learned from my coworkers. And I remember it also was hard to navigate because I'm 23 and I'm coaching athletes that are literally the same age as me or around the same age. So you're trying to figure out how to now be a professional and manage that aspect of it when they want to be your friend. And but it also worked to my advantage because I think one of my superpowers has always been my ability to connect with people and build relationships. But I had to navigate that early on. But I had so much fun just sort of figuring it out. I just remember like I was myself. I didn't really have anybody telling me to be otherwise. So I just kind of got to do things the way that I saw fit. But I also craved more structure and I wanted to learn, and like I've always been driven to be really good at whatever I did. So I ended up leaving after a year because I wanted to go learn, and ended up going to Louisville where my mentor was somebody that was pretty well known for being someone really difficult to work for, but also somebody that was like going to teach you and like mentor you the right way. So
yeah, that sounds like a very cool experience. I know with me, when I first get thrown into new environments, I'm pretty shy. Like I'm very reserved, and it takes me time. I mean, it took me probably like a year to develop into like my true to give my teammates like my true personality. I mean, Letitia saw it pretty early on. That's my girl, so she saw it pretty early on. But I definitely have to dip my toe in a little bit before I can like give my full self. So that's a really good quality that you're able to just quickly connect with those people and form those connections early on. Once you got to Louisville, what sports did you start diving into there?
Part of the appeal of Louisville was I got to assist with basketball, which is obviously a really successful sport there. I got to take over softball, which was like my second favorite sport, and then volleyball and tennis. So I had worked with volleyball and tennis at Purdue as well, and at Marquette and at Minnesota when I was in grad school. So it was sort of the perfect combination of teams. Then it was also a chance to work for somebody who had really blazed the trail as far as women in the profession too. We had 7 full-time coaches and 4 of us were women, which is like unheard of across the board. You're like you might have 1, maybe 2 at most, but 4 out of 7 was awesome. So I got to assist with basketball, and that was sort of my first like real like dive in, like full, like all hands on deck sort of experience with that. But it was a really stark contrast from my time at Purdue, where I was kind of free to do it however I wanted to there, and then I went into this system where like everything had it was black and white. This is how we do things. Everybody does it the same way. If you don't do it this way, you're wrong. And I was the first outsider that was hired. So like, and my coworker, and my boss will admit it too, like she was harder on me than anybody else. And so my first 6 months there, I was like, this is, it's like trying to learn a new language. Everything was so new. So there were a lot of growing pains. But I was like, I'm so hard-headed and like determined. I was like, I'm not going to let this person like make me feel like I'm not capable of doing this job. Like I'm going to figure this out, and like at the end of it, I'm going to be better for it. So
and oftentimes when people are hard on us, it's because they see the most potential in us. So that tough love, that encouragement, even if it's not always tough love
or necessary,
right? Exactly. If it's just roughing you up, it's pivotal for us in getting us in the directions that we need to get going in. And she clearly saw a lot in you, and you've clearly taken that very far. I want to talk a little bit about South Carolina. Coming here, you joined the team in 2018, or 2017.
2018.
2018.
Yeah, 2018.
I remember 2018. And I know you do too. It was
Try not to.
Right. Try to block that out. It was that was the year that I committed to the University of South Carolina.
You came to camp that summer.
I did. I did. So the way that happened was me and my whole family actually, me and my grandparents and my parents were in Turks and Caicos, and we were taking our big family vacation for like a week. And the camp landed on day 5 of that trip. So on day 5, me and my mom flew back to Columbia so I could be at that camp. And I showed up at 7 a.m. I think the doors opened at 7, and I was there at 7. And I'm warming up. It's like me and only like 3 other girls in there. And I'm going through everything. I mean, I'm putting myself through not necessarily a whole workout, but because I'm a sweater, I was very sweaty. And this day, I just so happened to be wearing a gray shirt. And I'm playing pickup with people. We're playing one-on-one. There's players coming up to me. They're like, "Oh, you're working, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." And the camp is about to start. And I see Ari come out from the doors. And she's like, "All right, everybody, time to take pictures with Coach." And I'm like, pictures with Coach?
Wait a second.
I'm wearing a gray shirt. And I'm sweated through completely. So I'm like, oh, no, this is going to be so bad. And I go back there, and I see her, and she looks at me. She's like, "Okay, I see you." And I'm like, oh, so this is a good sign. I mean, I'm not too pleased about my condition right now, but I'm glad that it caught her attention. And I go through this camp, and everything went well. And wow, this is a long story. There's a lot of backstory to this, but I ended up going through that camp, and I think it was like a month later, my mom gets a call from Dawn Staley offering a preferred walk-on spot to me. And that was pretty awesome. So I guess that camp stood out to her.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. It's funny because I have a pretty vivid memory. And I remember you at that camp, and I remember you wearing a gray shirt, but I remember you being there before everybody else and just like draining shots left and right. And I remember we were all like, who is this? Like, we knew you were a local kid. Like, I remember hearing about it, and I just, like, I can remember that, like, in my memory of you being there and then us offering you. And obviously I remember, like, the progression of you, like, going from walk-on to scholarship and all of it, too. So pretty cool little origin story.
Very cool. So our 2018s were a little bit different. I don't think I've heard some of the stories from that time, but what was that transition like for you coming from Louisville? It was a hard year for you. You end up in your dream position. You get to be the coach of a basketball team. It's what you've always wanted to do. What was it like joining a team like that and then walking into this team in that year?
I always tell people that my first year here was such a pivotal time. I think not just professionally, but personally too. And I think there are so many layers to it. One, it's my first time where I can actually sort of take everything I've learned, and now it's my show. I get to do things the way that I want to. But I also knew and was given some information coming in from the coaches that, like, this was a difficult group and, like, they needed to kind of get in line. There were certain players that we really needed to help us, and, like, it was my job to really help with that culture. And I remember I put so much pressure on myself. I always do, like, to be the very best at what I do. So I'm coming in and, like, I'm young. I'm 28. Like, I have experience, but at the same time, like, this is new territory. So I'm trying so hard and so focused on, like, these results that I want to get and the training and doing things my way. And then I remember getting there and starting, and, like, I was met with just, like, this force field of resistance from our players. Just like, who are you? Like, nah, I'm not, like,
and you're just like, I'm
not
coach.
messing with you. Yeah. And so, like, I was almost told, like, I kind of almost had to come in and sort of be like a dictator almost, and, like, be hard and be tough. And, like, that's not really my personality at all. And they didn't respond well to that at all. Like, we trained, they got stronger, they got faster, all of that. Like, we were healthy. We made it to a Sweet 16, which by, like, most people's standards is a pretty successful year. But, like, it was miserable. And, like, there were so many situations I didn't know how to handle, I hadn't dealt with before. Like, I really just struggled. And I mean, I can't thank Coach Staley enough, because from day one she gave me her trust and just let me do my job, but she also really encouraged me to just keep doing what I was doing that first year. She knew what we were dealing with. It was just really hard for all of us. But I think for me personally, it made me really realize that, like, I wasn't doing a good enough job as a coach. Like, I wasn't a very good leader. Like, I had a decent relationship with some of our players. Most of them I didn't. And, like, to me, that's the most important part for me. Like, training is cool, and, like, strength and conditioning just sort of became, like, the platform for me to do what I love, which is coach people and help people and help develop them. And, like, I didn't feel like I was doing that at all. I was just training athletes that didn't want to be there and had no desire to train with me. So I was like, that just led me down this deep dive of how can I be a better coach? And it's not like, no, I can train basketball players just fine, but I need to figure out how to communicate, how to lead, how to deal with conflict, like, how to build better relationships. So, like, that completely just changed my perspective on how I approach my job and the stuff that I focused on, and just really diving into, like, human behavior and motivation, and, like, how can I just be better? And I think that's, like, that year I was also super burnt out and just like, what am I doing? Like, is this really what I want to do? Like, but when I changed my perspective and I worked on those things, and then obviously that year passed, I learned a lot. Our team dynamic changed. Your class came in. And that allowed me a kind of a clean slate to try some of these things I'd been working on and, like, really doing things differently. But we still had half the team that I had to repair relationships with from the previous year, Ty and Kiki. And I was able to do that, but it was really, like, a turning point for me of, like, how I do my job and just how I view it. But it also was, like, we really had to re-establish our culture, and you guys helped us do that. Like, you guys are such a foundational piece of that. But for me personally, it was like, okay, it's a turning point. Like, I got to figure this out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely difficult feeling that pressure, especially when for you, it's so easy. It felt so easy for you to connect with people. So when you feel that resistance, it's like you don't want to have to change who you are as a person to adapt to certain people. But when you're stepping into a new role, sometimes you have to do that for the time being. But I definitely saw the effort you put into that notion my freshman year. And I saw the effort you put into Ty and Kiki and rebuilding those relationships with them. But I just remember us, like, we thought you were great. I mean, we really, really adored you as a strength coach. As freshmen, especially because of that connectivity you had with us and that caring for us as people way above being athletes. Like, being athletes is secondary to connecting with us as people. And it felt more like a friend relationship, even though, I mean, there was that respect for a coach, but it felt like we had a friend in you, and that felt really, really good. I know I'm speaking for myself. I want to talk about, like, some more anecdotal stories from our time at South Carolina, because I know that the just starting off from my freshman year, the conditioning workouts we had at 6 a.m, or was it 7? I mean,
Final Four Fridays?
No, the just conditioning.
Oh yeah.
Which was my personal HE double hockey sticks, because I barely could sleep the night before those. I don't know about everyone else, but it was very frightening. But then it turned out to not even be all that horrible, but just the anticipation for those workouts was pretty brutal. But I still remember there's this one where I think it was our last one, because we mixed those with Final Four Fridays, right?
Not the same day. Are you talking about like the 150s? Like
I am talking about the 150s. Yes. So we did Final Four Fridays and 150s in the same week. I'm having a hard time recalling.
I remember 150s were on Wednesdays.
Okay.
Like middle of the week, and then Final Four Friday was at the end of the week in preseason. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember after our last 150, oh man, now I'm thinking about Final Fours. But after our last 150s, we all went into the locker room and we just blasted Pop Smoke and danced. We were so happy those were over. But now I'm thinking about Final Four Fridays. What was your inspiration for starting those?
Yeah, when we were at Louisville, we did something similar. It wasn't called Final Four Friday, but with a lot of our teams, we would do like Fun Fridays. So I remember with softball, I would do Fun Fridays. With basketball, we had Fun Fridays, and it was always some sort of team competition. And then with softball too, we also had this Oklahoma City challenge. So like for them, the World Series is in Oklahoma City. So like in the fall, the last workouts of the fall, like we had to have 4 days of just competitive events. We'd split teams up into red and black. There'd be a draft and so I had all these sort of competitive ideas. And then so when I got to South Carolina, I wanted to implement something. And I think my very first year I called it Fun Friday. And it wasn't until my second year, your freshman year, that I changed it to Final Four Fridays. And to be honest, people always ask me like how I come up with this stuff. I have no idea. My brain goes to a different place. I think it's part of my creative outlet, but it's just I wanted to make it something where it was about you guys and putting it back on you to figure things out and putting you guys in positions to be leaders, having to strategize and communicate, and for me to just kind of step back and observe and find areas that are sticking out to me in a good way. Like, what areas can we improve upon? Like, how can we work together as a team? But then also, like, what are ways that we can compete? And just like trying to get you in different locations, and it just turned into like something that really caught momentum, like with our team. And I know you probably, it's a love-hate relationship, right? Like,
definitely.
Some of them were really physically challenging, others weren't as physically, but more maybe mental and strategic. And so I think as we've gone year by year, like, it's just become a staple in our off-season and preseason program. And I think all of it comes back to like helping you guys develop as leaders, but also like putting you guys in positions to figure it out. Because ultimately, when you guys play, it's on you guys to figure it out and communicate. We can only do so much. And it's also to sort of imitate like the difficulty level that it takes to reach a Final Four, and like playing on that Friday of the Final Four and then having to do it again that Sunday to play for a national championship. Like, having put you guys through really hard stuff before, so like when you get out on the court, like basketball should be easy.
Right. No, we were definitely built for the occasion. One of my favorite memories of the Final Four was the first time you took us to the CLA to do the steps. Oh my gosh. I swear everyone remembers like their first Final Four Friday. I don't know if that was our first one.
I don't know either.
But that was like, when I think of it, I think of that day. Because after we did the stairs, and just for an explanation, the CLA Final Four Friday is you're in the upper deck and you have a rope. Everyone has this rope on their shoulders, and they either have to carry medicine balls,
heavy
it's just
medicine
a bunch
balls,
of obscure
kettlebells,
objects,
chains, weird, uncomfortable, something that's uncomfortable and just annoying to carry.
And you go up and down each flight of stairs in the upper bowl.
Can't drop anything.
And can't drop anything.
Can't lose the rope. Can't touch the floor.
Yep.
And you have to get in under 30 minutes.
Yeah, it is no joke. And I mean, all the while, you can't carry a 50-pound kettlebell for 30 minutes straight. So you have to pass this to the person behind you. You've got to switch shoulders. I mean, it's no joke. But I remember at the end of this one, because now you do it where we'll finish the stairs and then we'll go around the console, or what, the
concourse. Sometimes
Concourse.
it's a challenger on the concourse. Sometimes if the floor is down, we'll do something, those wooden sleds.
But on this occasion, we had to do planks. Do you remember this? Where we had those 75-pound bags that you put on our backs, and we had to hold a plank for, it felt like eternity. But I remember I had E next to me, right? So me and E are in this plank, and my girl is just shaking. And I am too, naturally. But it felt like life or death in that moment. So I'm like, E, you have to hold on, E. We got it, E. And it's not even a long plank that we're holding.
It's probably a minute.
Literally. But after walking down each one of those steps and then just seeing the sight of those bags, knowing that it has to go on my back, I'm like, it's over with. It's over with. But that was one of my favorite ones.
I remember, yes. It's funny because I can remember almost every Final Four vividly from every year, but the CLA always seems to be the one that everyone hates the most.
Yeah. That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Yeah. Is there one Final Four Friday that sticks out to you in particular?
There's probably ones that stick out, both for good reasons and bad reasons.
If you know, you know.
Yeah. Man.
Let's stay positive. Let's think about the good ones.
There are a lot. I remember with you guys, like the CLA one was awesome because I remember actually, I think the very first time you guys did it, it might have been the first one. You guys didn't make it.
Really?
You guys didn't make it your freshman year, and we did it again. And I remember the second time that you guys did it, like you guys crushed it. Mm-hmm. I remember that specifically. I really enjoy beach volleyball every time, mostly because it's so entertaining for me to watch you all, because you hate to be dirty. Most of you hate being outside, and you hate bugs, and it's all of it in one, and it's just...
And it's like sun hasn't even come up yet. Yeah,
but I think that one is fun. I think that one's like legitimately fun.
Definitely.
Man, last year, we had a lot of firsts. Taking them to the Riverwalk and doing a whole challenge on the Riverwalk, but then finishing, it was the last one of the summer, surprising them with a water balloon fight.
That's awesome.
Was awesome. So I try to make it fun.
Oh, absolutely. Like, when you surprised us with kickball, like the last one we did, we're all just like, thank you, Jesus. But no, Final Four Fridays are great, and exactly, they get us prepared for those uncomfortable moments. So when we're there on the court, it doesn't feel so bad. Oh my gosh, we have to talk about the Subway sandwiches, because I was just about to talk about how we went undefeated in 2019, 2020, and that is just absolutely not true at all. And how could I forget such a pivotal moment in everybody's career?
Really?
Was when we were in the Bahamas. We were in St. Thomas. We were in the stomping grounds of Miss Aaliyah Boston, and we lost to Indiana.
Our first game there.
Yeah. Was it our first or second? It was our first?
Our first game.
Oh my gosh. Wait. No.
Yes.
Really?
It was.
Wow.
Yes.
So we're staying at the Ritz. We're like
Living.
Oh, we're here.
We are living.
Like I'm like 18 or 19. I'm like, oh yeah, this is lavish. This is what I'm talking about. We're at the Ritz. We're getting fed fruit.
Nespresso machines in our hotel room.
It's just beautiful. And then we're like, all right, I don't want to like give the impression that we think that we're just going to roll into a game, because that is absolutely not true. But we're just feeling good. You're in St. Thomas. How are you not supposed to feel good? So we roll up to our first game, and we lose to Indiana, and that is just a slap in the face. And it's a reality check for us, because we came down to St. Thomas to handle business. So that really set the tone for us from now on. But then that practice the next day, we go through a practice, no AC in the gym, Hot. Unbelievably hot.
No one's in a good mood.
No.
But we're still in the Virgin Islands, so it's
so how can you not be
exactly.
a little bit right? So there's some duality there. And I mean, we're used to having our post-practice smoothie, our post-practice snacks, whatever it may be. So we go over and we've got these smoothies, and we're looking around at the coaches, and they've got Subway sandwiches, and I'm like, oh word, like we get Subway after practice, like let's go. And we're looking around, and there's no sandwiches for us, and we're like, guys, what's going on? Like, where's our sandwiches? And coach is like, oh, y'all lost, so you don't get Subway after you lose. And we were all so hurt. But I swear the lack of Subway sandwiches motivated us to an undefeated season since then.
Right.
So that was a pretty fun moment.
Right. We did it for the Subway sandwiches. Yes.
Every single moment. But no, the St. Thomas tournament was a whole lot of fun. And then we ended up playing Baylor in the championship. They had Melissa Smith, Taya Cooper. Who else was on that team? Was DJ on the team at the time? Oh, no.
No, I think they had Lauren Cox. I think Lauren.
Oh, Lauren Cox was on the team. That was an awesome game.
And they were like top 5.
Yeah.
Or like 1 or 2 in the country.
Yeah.
I think I remember that being like the turning point for us. Like,
absolutely.
We knew we were going to be good. We didn't really know how good, and then it was that game. I think that sort of like we turned it up a notch.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I mean, from there on, undefeated, get all the way through the SEC tournament, win the championship game. We're all going home for spring break. We get 5 days off before we get back into the swing of things for the NCAA tournament. And I just remember the team group chat just blowing up with, no fans in New Orleans, only family in New Orleans, and then canceling the whole thing. That was a very pivotal time for us, because we had such huge aspirations for our season that year. And it was a major, major setback. But what was that time like for you as a coach? Like, what was going on through your head when we had such a long break? And I mean, we were on a roll, and you're trying to transfer that energy that we had that season into the next one. What was going through your head during this time, and what steps were you taking to get us in the best position to continue that trajectory of success for the following season?
That was such a weird time, I think, for everybody. And I think as coaches, we had to grieve it. We had to allow you guys to grieve it. And then we're trying to figure out, like, okay, where do we go from here? Because there were so many question marks. And then for me, it's like, okay, how can I help keep you guys in shape at home with the circumstances? But then more importantly, it was more like, there are so many things going on in the world right now. It's like, first of all, let's make sure you guys are okay. Like, but then we started to have those conversations and like talk about the things that were actually happening, like between not just COVID, but then you're looking at everything that was happening like in society, like all the stuff that was happening with all like the racial injustices. And then like it felt like all of these big world events were all happening at the same time. Definitely. That were like super heavy. And so it's figuring like, how do we like make sure you guys are okay? Like, let's talk about the things that are happening. Like, yeah, okay, we need to stay in shape and all that stuff. Like, I'll figure that out. But I think more importantly, it was like, how do we continue to stay connected through this time and like talk about everything? Like, let's get it all out in the open. Let's talk about what we're feeling. Like, because obviously we're all pissed and like hurting that we were undoubtedly going to, like, we're going to win a national championship, right? So it's like, that's a hard process. Like, you got to figure that, you know, you got to work through that. So, and then it was for me, it's like, I've got to be creative. I've got to work with each of you to, like, let's do as much as we can with what you've got. And then, like, once we figured out, like, what the steps that we're going to be taking to get you guys back, then it's like, okay, like, everyone's health, everyone's safety, everyone's, like, mental well-being is first and foremost. Like, the training's going to take care of itself. I was never stressing about that. It was more so, like, how are we going to make this happen? How can I find, you know, problem solve this? But I think as coaches, we're just like, man, like, this is a lot. This is a lot for us to deal with. Definitely. And then let alone, like, as an 18 to 22-year-old, you're trying to make sense of a whole lot of stuff. And so I think that was the most important thing for us.
Yeah, that was definitely a tough time. And I think all the coaches, everyone involved did a really good job of keeping everyone connected, and just, like you said, talking to each other, keep asking how everyone's doing, and
our Zooms and everything.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, I mean, I remember our
Zoom
Zoom
became the new thing.
Oh my gosh, and the Zoom workouts that you would have. Those were so funny. I mean, you would look down at, like, the quarter and someone's just, like, laying down. We're doing push-ups and someone's just, like, not even on the screen.
Not doing a push-up. Yeah.
Yeah, but we as a team and as a collective grew a lot during that time. It's like, it often seems like that's the theme. Like, during difficult times is when connectivity grows the most. So I think once we all got back together after that time, although it was difficult, there was a lot of a morale boost with it too, because we had grown a lot together during that time of separation. And then transitioning into that previous year post-COVID, but still COVID, not even post-COVID, it's still COVID, and it was the COVID year.
The bubble.
Wow. What a time.
That messed with me more than I knew it was going to.
Big
like
time.
living in a hotel for 18 days. I got home and I was like,
let me touch some grass. Let me literally physically touch some grass. Because do you remember in San Antonio when they took us on a walk and we were like, let's go. And then it was just a walk around the block.
The walk was from our hotel across the street to practice.
Literally. And then you're getting poked every single day. That was a rough time for everyone. And then getting to San Antonio, 18 days in a hotel, losing in the Final Four. I mean.
And, like, the most heartbreaking play of all time.
Heartbreaking way.
Yeah. It's like you had this previous year that just, like, ripped your heart out, and then you go through all the adversity and, like, figuring it out, and just to get to that point where you can even play basketball, right?
Right.
And you get that close, and it was like, we knew, like, this group was destined to win a national championship.
Yep.
And, like, we felt it, like, at our fingertips, and then dealing with another heartbreaking end of the season. It was like, you knew that time. Like, you knew it was coming, but it's like you had to go through some stuff.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
You had to go through some stuff first.
Absolutely. That was a heartbreaking year. And, I mean, for many, many reasons. I think that's a year that I've kind of suppressed a little bit. Just the hardships of it. I mean, we couldn't really see each other for the first few days in San Antonio. I mean, I know I'm going back to San Antonio a lot, but this was a long year. But this was just like a period of time where you really felt it the most, like being in this hotel and not being able to even see someone next door.
It was like eating dinner by yourself.
Right. It was just, it's a lot. And yeah, just thinking back on that
I know
time,
I struggled mentally when we got back, like, out of the bubble. Those next few weeks, I was like, for a reason I couldn't explain, it was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
It was very tough. And then transitioning to junior year, or my junior year, definitely a more exciting time, a more pivotal year for us, getting us back in the right direction. Still dealing with some complications from COVID a little bit. Or why am I drawing a blank on 2022?
We had 16 players. We were like I equate us to the Monstars, like in Space Jam. Like, we had a roster of
we did
16. Majority all McDonald's All-Americans.
Oh my gosh, right.
Camilla transferred in. We got Breezy.
Sanaya Rivers.
Raven.
Raven.
Fagan.
Yep.
like our roster was stacked top to bottom.
Yeah, absolutely.
16 players is a lot.
A lot.
And so everyone had questions about how we're going to keep everybody happy, how we're going to do it.
Right. What was that like for you? I mean, as a strength coach, like that's a big group of people, and everyone has very individual needs. And I mean, just trying to put weight on people, trying to take weight off people, like just as some examples, like you're having to customize workouts and programs and routines for each person on your team. What is that like with 16 people?
16 doesn't seem like a lot, and there's so many. There's probably other strength coaches that will listen to this and like you work with one team, like, and I've been in positions where you have teams of 30 plus, or like you're just working with multiple teams, right? But like when you're with basketball and you just have one team, that's all you do is like deep dive into every single person. So while it's not a large number of people, I think the amount of work is the same, if not more, because it's deeper. So it's really like, I just view my job as finding solutions and like figuring out how to solve problems. Like, what does each person need? Like, what's the easiest way to get what they need? Sometimes it's multiple things, but what's the lowest hanging fruit? And then like, what am I doing? What's Craig doing? What's Jeremy doing on the nutritional front? Because like, I can't do it by myself. So it's everybody sort of all hands on deck. That's, I think, the fun part though.
Absolutely.
And like, that's what I enjoy doing is I think I just like live by the 3 words, like figure it out. Just figure it out. And it's a lot of trial and error and seeing what sticks, and then also like asking you your input about like what you like, or like what are you going to work the hardest at? Okay, let's do that.
Right.
Because that's going to give us more than me trying to make you do something. So like I view it as a partnership. Like I don't want to be a dictator, but I also want you to understand what we're doing and why, so that when you leave, one, you know how to train. 2, secondly, we develop a lot of pros. Oftentimes they're a little bit on their own when they get to that level. So like I want them to understand it. So just working with each player and like figuring out what works and feels the best is a process, and it's always changing. But you kind of have to be adaptable.
Absolutely. So how would you say that you've grown throughout your time at the University of South Carolina?
Man, you get to a point like with training, like the training doesn't really change that much. Like, yeah, you're always trying to find little ways to make things better, do things better, maybe new pieces of equipment and stuff like that. But like, I think mostly, I'm in year 7 now, and it's like the training part is the easy part, but like you're constantly getting new teams. Every team is different. Every team's personality is different. What they need is different. And so I feel like I'm constantly growing just in my ability to like adapt and again just connect with figuring out how to connect with each team, and like what does coach need from me and what do our coaches need from me like in this particular year that may be different than years past. And it's always trying to keep the main thing, like coach says all the time, right? It's like they come here to play basketball,
right? They
don't come here to lift weights. So what am I doing to help them play basketball better? Like that's what I'm always trying to answer. And so being at practice, watching them, like just watching basketball, understanding how we need to play, how coach wants us to play. Like that's where I've grown the most. It's just like being that middle person between what the coaches want and then like what the players need, and like helping them do basketball better.
Right.
Which is hard. Like,
it is.
Because a lot of, truthfully, a lot of strength coaches, like, I'm just going to train you, I'm going to make you bigger, faster, stronger, and then I'm just going to hope that you get better at basketball. Like, to me, that's not good enough. So I'm always trying to, like, understand it deeper.
Right.
And, like, really, like, immerse myself in the basketball part of it, because ultimately, like, that's what they're here to do.
Right.
So.
And I think you do an excellent job at that. I mean, you can look at your track record. We have healthy teams. I mean, we've had our bump in the road with injuries here and there, but for the most part, we have healthy teams. And I mean, you, Craig, Jeremy have a lot to do with that part of it, and that's very admirable. It's like, it's almost, well, it is a science, that correlation between just training for strength training and strength training for specialized athletes.
Obviously, like you hear, like injuries plague so many teams, and like we've had 54 games missed total in 6 years out of like 2,700 opportunities, and like your entire class stayed healthy, like, and like those three, like Zaya, Bree, Aaliyah,
Right.
started every single game. Like they didn't miss a game.
Right.
Like none of you guys missed a game in
It's
your
pretty
entire
incredible.
career.
It's honestly
Like
pretty
your
unheard
entire
of.
class didn't miss a game in their entire career.
That's pretty unheard of. I mean, that's very impressive.
It starts with coach, but like every single person
Right.
like doing their job at the highest level. Yeah, in 6 years too.
Yeah.
We haven't had a season-ending injury since 2021. Like Raven tore ACL
Right.
her second game of her freshman year, which like we kind of like she was sort of a train wreck coming in. Lily missed 6 games because of her Achilles, but besides that, nobody's had a season-ending injury.
Right. And I mean, Lily came back extremely fast, and she was extremely effective when she did come back.
Right.
So just not only our ability to stay healthy, but our ability to rehab well. And I mean, we just have a great team around us, not just from coaches, but from our nutritionists, from our strength and conditioning coach, from our athletic trainers, from even the athletic trainers, helpers that they have, the interns that come in. I mean, it's hands on deck, and everyone's super dedicated and driven to staying healthy and getting healthy. So that's definitely admirable.
I think, I think it starts with coach. Like you have to have a head coach that gets it, but also like every single person on staff has to be great at what they do. But I've given presentations and I talk about this stat because I think it's like in the last 6 years, we've lost as a program 19 games. 10 of those came my first year in 2018. And in the last 3 years, we've lost 3. We haven't lost a regular season game since 21.
It's pretty incredible.
Plus, your class, your record was like insane. I think it was something like 138-9 or something like that. Like
it's incredible.
But to have that sustained success, like winning is really hard. Winning 1 year is really hard. Winning consistently is really hard, but it truly is like everyone, top to bottom. And I think people always ask what our superpower is, or like what is it? And I think obviously we all are experts at what we do, but I also think like our superpower, and maybe you can give your opinion on this. Our superpower is our relationships within our team, like how real coach is with you guys. But I think the genuine like relationships and like the joy and like the fun and all of it that we create in our environment that's like the special piece of it that I think a lot of high performing teams miss. But like I think because we all have great relationships, we can make really good decisions when it comes to putting you guys first. But also your ability to have relationships with coach that are real and genuine, and like she just gives it to you like it is. It allows you guys to grow and develop and like be your best. And I think when you're free to be your best and like you're free, like for me, I'm free to do my job. Everyone's free to do their jobs. We have fun. Like it's joy. Like we genuinely love each other. Like that to me is what separates us. Like, yes, we have talent, but so do a lot of other teams. Right. And so there's some things that you can't really explain by just like X's and O's, black and white, numbers, stats, data, like whatever. Like, and I think to me, from my like experiencing a whole lot of teams and cultures and environments, to me, like that is what separates it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you really saw that come to fruition this previous year. I mean, there weren't really high expectations for the team. I mean, of course, we had a huge target on our back, but it felt like a transition year. It felt like a rebuilding year, as they call it. And you see this team, they have a bunch of young people, they have some transfers, and you're wondering what they're going to do.
You lose your entire starting 5.
Yeah.
You lose 7 players.
Right. I mean, that's a huge pivotal transition year. And then you see these interviews and everyone's just like, oh, we just love each other. We just have fun. Like, we just love each other. And we're like, okay, is love going to get us the national championship? Yeah. And it did. I mean, they go out there and they perform and they have fun. And the chemistry, the freedom, the chemistry was out the charts. It was unbelievable. So, yeah, that genuine love for each other from everybody involved is definitely our superpower. I wholeheartedly agree. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you a couple questions. First, what is the best piece of advice that you've received that you carry with you, or what is your biggest piece of advice you can offer someone else? either in your field or just general piece of advice?
I tell people a lot in my field, but I also think this is true for everything, that it doesn't have to look a certain way. And I was taught in my field as a strength and conditioning coach, there's a certain perception and persona behind that. And I was taught that it has to look a certain way. But I didn't fit that mold. And I think by having the courage to be myself and do things my own way, I've sort of carved my own path in my career. So I always try to tell people, especially women in my field, that it doesn't have to look a certain way. You don't have to fit inside this box that we were sort of taught that we had to fit inside.
I like that. And then a more obscure question for you. If you didn't become a strength and conditioning coach, what would you be doing?
I wrestle with this one. This is I think this has changed. At first, I used to say I think I would be a surgeon.
Okay.
Specifically a brain surgeon.
Interesting.
Because I have this weird, I think my brain works a certain way, and I have this weird desire to be really perfect at everything. And I think you have to be perfect as a brain surgeon.
Absolutely.
But actually, as I've gone, I think I would make a really good therapist.
I think you would too. I wholeheartedly think you would too. That's very cool. Well, Molly, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate having you on, and thank you again for being my first guest of the Coop. I
couldn't be more grateful to be on here as your guest, but your first guest is even more special, and obviously we've been at this for a few years now, and always appreciate you, and happy to sit down and get to chat with you any chance that we get.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and we will see you next time.
Looking forward to it.